Hey guys, I've just been editing over this podcast and realized I sound like a complete baby. I don't know why that happened, but I don't really want to record it again, so have fun. What's up, guys? We're back with another TheSportUniverse podcast. The saying here is that the sports are our universe. However, today we're just going to be focused on a Mets podcast. As I said in the last one, I'm a big Mets fan, and I have a special guest with me who just wants to talk about the Mets. More specifically, wants to get out all his pessimistic rage out about the Mets. It's my dad.
Hi.
So currently we're on a pretty long drive, so we have nothing really else to do, and we had been planning to do a little, a little interview with my dad, but then I was thinking let's just turn it into an actual podcast type thing so I can talk to. And so we're just gonna talk about the Mets and hopefully kill off about a half hour of this trip. So this is my dad. He's been a Mets fan for a really long time. Do you want to tell them about how long you've been a Mets fan for?
Sure.
Go.
So, I've been a Mets fan for I'd say about 40 years. I don't remember exactly when it started. I mean, my dad was always a Mets fan. My grandfather was a Mets fan after the Brooklyn Dodgers left for California. And, I first remember following the Mets. It was either 1978 or 1979. I remember we were listening on the radio. The Mets were losing, as they did a lot back then. Those were very, very bad years for the Mets. And I remember it was losing. I think they were losing by 3 runs. Bottom of the 9th inning. 2 men were out. Bases were loaded. And an old bad Mets outfielder named Steven Henderson hit a grand slam home run with 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th inning, and the Mets won the game, and it was very exciting, and we were just listening on the radio, and from then on, I've been a Mets fan. There have been a lot of disappointing seasons since 1978, but always been watching and listening.
Yeah, so I guess that moment that he started being a Mets fan was a good moment, but he hasn't had a lot of those. He's definitely had had a lot more better
lows than highs.
No, a lot more better moments than I have had in my Mets fandom. Obviously, he was around. Well, he wasn't paying attention in 1969 since he was just born, he was just born because that's October. And then in 1986, he was around, and I hadn't even been born in 2000 when they were in the World Series. No, I was?
Yeah.
Wasn't that October?
Maybe you were born in January.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's how years work. So, I've always asked him, like, what's his favorite memory as a Mets fan, or, like, his favorite year, and I'm pretty sure he always says 1986, because obviously they won a World Series back then. I guess for me, it would be, the only other year for me would be 2015 when they made it to the World Series. But, I haven't had a lot of good moments, but he hasn't really either, and I guess that's the big thing with being a Mets fan, and that's also for a lot of our teams. We're Mets, Jets, Knicks. I'm a Rangers fan, but I don't really pay attention to them. But all those teams have been really bad. And that is what my dad has passed on to me. Bad team after bad team.
Proud of it.
Yeah, sometimes I wish I was born a Yankees fan. I'm sure that's how a lot of Mets fans feel, because obviously the Yankees are good and always good, but the Mets just are not always good.
They only have 25 more world championships. It's close.
Yeah, I guess. But I'm not going to get into that. So I guess I'll just ask my dad some questions right now so he can get out his pessimistic views about the Mets that hopefully he won't bother with me every time we watch a Mets game for the rest of the season or talk about the Mets. So let's see, what could be my first question? Okay, before the season started compared to now. How did you feel about the moves that they made in the off season? How did you feel about them back then, and how do you feel about them now?
Well, the big move, of course, was the Cano trade,
Sorry, 1 second. We're driving, as I said before, so the audio's not going to be the greatest on this. Just to let you know, it's going to continue for the rest of it because we're going to be driving. Back to my dad.
All right. So, of course, the big move in the offseason was trading for Robinson Cano, which I was not happy with from the beginning. When the rumors were starting, I was very upset that they were trading 2 recent number 1 picks.
Me too.
And, at one point the trade was a little worse because they were going to be trading Jeff McNeil,
who's really bad,
3rd in the league in batting right now. So I'm very happy they held on to him. He's he plays every day for the Mets basically, even though he's injured right now. So it got better when they pulled McNeil out of the deal. But it wasn't a trade that I was excited about when I thought we were getting a Robinson Cano who was going to be productive, and he hasn't even been that. He has been a big disappointment. He's injured. Hopefully that's a quick stay on the injured list.
There we go.
Got to make sure I don't call it disabled list anymore.
Which is a good thing.
Which, by the way, I would like to point out, since I'm ranting about things anyway, it took Major League Baseball a very long time to stop using the word disabled, which is really not appropriate in most of its usage anymore. Anyway, back to Robinson Cano. So, if they didn't get Diaz, who's been, really, really good as a closer at this point, who knows where they'd be right now because their bullpen is terrible, and getting Diaz, according to a lot of experts, was why they had to take the Cano contract. But he is underperforming. I mean, it is starting to remind me of some other bad Mets trades in the past. Robbie Alomar, for example.
Don't know who that
is. A Hall of Fame second baseman.
I've heard the name Alomar.
Yeah, so they traded for him, and he ended up doing nothing for the Mets, even though he's a Hall of Fame infielder, and Robinson Cano seems to be heading on that track. Hopefully not, because we got him for 4 more seasons after this one, but that does not look like a good move.
When they were first rumoring about that, I guess I'm more optimistic than my dad about things, and I'm pretty sure that's with all my sports teams. I guess even though I've experienced less good moments, he's experienced a lot more bad moments since he's just been around for a while. No offense. And but when that first started, I didn't want them to give up Kelenic. What was the other guy?
Dunn.
Yeah, or Dunn. I was just looking at more like there was a couple ways I was looking at it. First off, they're giving up a lot of young talent for a closer and Robinson Cano. Robinson Cano's like 35, I think, and Edwin Diaz is obviously in the bullpen, and I've always looked at bullpen pitchers, even if it's a closer, as they're very wishy-washy, or I guess a better term is fickle. And I've always kind of viewed them as like kickers in football. They're good one season, then they're bad. It's just like never a definite thing with a closer, and trading so much just to get Edwin Diaz, because that's what basically the deal was, that they were getting Edwin Diaz, like my dad said, and then Robinson Cano. It wasn't just a throw-in, but it was a part of the deal that they would be taking on the money from Robinson Cano's contract.
My problem with the deal was that the Mets, because they're the Mets, it's always about the money, and they were getting cash from the Mariners, which ended up being less than was rumored in the first place.
I forgot about that.
But they were supposed to be saving, like they weren't paying Cano all of his money, so that was a good deal. But if the Mariners were so interested in getting rid of Cano, then the Mets should have been able to negotiate a better deal in terms of the players and forget about the stupid money.
Yeah, that's another big thing. Like when the Yankees were able to trade for Stanton, they were fine taking up most of that money, so it made it much less talent that they had to give up to get Stanton. And my dad would always complain that the Mets could do the same thing because they're in a big market, but because they're owned by the Wilpons, they don't like to spend money. And that's always a big, I don't know if hardship's the right word with Mets fans, that why can't we just spend money like any other big market team would spend money? But going back to the trade, I just get excited when trades happen for big players, and I also viewed it as they're getting Edwin Diaz, who was good and was a good closer. I was worried that he wasn't going to be a good closer for the next season, but these were two players that were bona fide or had an actual track record that they would be good, and Kelenic and Dunn still don't. Obviously, they're still in the minors. They could turn into something, but I saw what Brody Van Wagenen was saying, that the Mets have a group of talented players right now that they might not have. I'm referring to the starting rotation, that they might not have in a few years, and they need to go for it now when they have them, because they might not have as much talent as they will in the future. And obviously Robinson Cano should be good right now, or better than he will be in 3 or 4 years. And when the season started, Robinson Cano, he had a really good spring training, and I remember the first game,
he hit a home run.
He hit a home run, and he had a really good first game, and I was like, oh my God, he's teaching all these young players how to hit to opposite field. He's going to be such a good player. It's just going to be regular old Robinson Cano, who's an all-star player. And he's after that game, the first game, he started to do bad, and I was like, okay, maybe it's just a slump. But now it's been more than 40 games of...
He has 2 home runs.
What?
I think he has 2 home runs this season.
He has like 3 or 4 home runs. That he definitely does not have only 2 home runs. And now over 40 games, it seems like he's just not there. Not what he used to be. Maybe he can pick it up, but right now it's been a disappointment. But I guess we can talk about Wilson Ramos. That was another big move that they made.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the Wilson Ramos deal. I will say that, it's kind of the Wilson Ramos contract was a reasonable one, if you can say reasonable, in when they give a guy $10 million a year or whatever he's getting, $8 million, $9 million. And it's kind of the opposite, because before they got Wilson Ramos, there were all these rumors about trading for Real Muto from the Marlins, and the stories were that the Marlins wanted everything. They wanted 2 of the position players who are on the team right now. They wanted Rosario and Conforto, or Nimmo and Conforto. It was like
a starting pitcher too.
Yeah.
They wanted Syndergaard.
Yeah, it was like they wanted everything, and of course, the fear, because that's the way the Mets operate, is that if they can acquire a player and only have to give up other players and not spend money, they're going to do that. And so the rumors were really scary, and then the rumors disappeared, and they just signed Wilson Ramos to a manageable deal. And the disappointing part was that the Marlins eventually just got a couple of decent prospects from the Phillies for Real Muto, and wasn't happy that the Phillies got him.
They basically handed the Phillies an amazing roster for a long time.
They helped the Phillies out a lot, and there's all this stuff going on in the division. You don't want to trade talented young players to a rival in the division, because you don't want to build up the Marlins for the future, and you also don't want to see the Marlins trading. So basically, the Marlins got some decent players, I guess. They got like Alfaro, who's their catcher now, and a couple other guys for Real Muto, but help the Phillies. The Phillies are a first place team now, and Real Muto's one reason why. And but again, if I have absolutely no confidence that the Mets were going to be able to negotiate a deal like that for Real Muto. And so, no matter what Ramos does, I want Rosario, I want Conforto, I want Nimmo all on the team, and I certainly want Syndergaard on the team. So all those options are bad ones, and Ramos has been decent.
Yeah, the one thing about Ramos is that obviously he hasn't been like all-star like he was last year, but he's definitely been a major improvement over players like Travis d'Arnaud, Kevin Plawecki, Thomas Nido, Mesoraco, Rene Rivera, even though that was a while ago, but they do have him back now. Who's their back? Oh, yeah, Thomas Nido's their backup. The one problem with Ramos is obviously he's slow, but I mean that's with every catcher, and also his defense isn't as good as I guess Travis d'Arnaud's defense was, which was one of the things with keeping Travis d'Arnaud, because he was a defensive catcher. But I much rather have a player that can actually hit the ball and get on base than always throw a runner out, which Travis d'Arnaud never did.
I mean, Ramos is doing better than Cano right now.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. Certainly got more RBIs than Cano does.
Yeah, he also has more home runs than Robinson Cano. But I guess it's a little different because the Mets basically gave up a lot for Robinson Cano compared to Wilson Ramos, which is what you were saying with JT Realmuto. And I get this is a little off topic, but the Marlins have just totally messed up everything. They had Stanton, Ozuna, Yelich, and JT Realmuto, and haven't had anything to show for all those trades for 2 MVPs and 4 All-Stars, basically.
Right. Well, I mean, it'll take a few years. I mean, that's what the Marlins, to the frustration of everybody else in the National League, managed to win 2 World Series. And after each World Series, they dismantled the team, traded everyone for prospects. Those prospects became people like Stanton and Ozuna and Yelich, or some, I don't know the exact origin of them, but that sort of thing allowed them to rebuild. I mean, they haven't been to the World Series again, but it's they don't have the Marlins do not have a long-term plan.
Yeah. So like you said, the thing about the World Series, it's like, what are they rebuilding for? You know what I mean? Because they rebuilt, got Stanton, Ozuna, Yelich, JT Realmuto, and then they're just rebuilding again, even though they had 4. I mean, they didn't know what Christian Yelich was going to turn into,
right? But
they had all these players that they could have done something.
But also that there's no rhyme or reason to what they've done, because they signed Stanton to a massive contract and then traded him.
And that was because they got Derek Jeter as their GM.
Right, and
he's
they
the GM, right?
Yeah. Oh no, he's a owner, part of majority owner, maybe. I don't know. But the point is, if they didn't sign Stanton to a massive contract and traded him before that, they could have gotten better prospects from a team like the Yankees, because the Yankees were the deep part of the deal was the Yankees taking on the ridiculous amount of money they were paying him. And that shows no planning, because why sign him to that massive extension just to get rid of him for pennies on the dollar? I mean, unless you're excited about Starlin Castro It's baffling. I mean,
and it's also annoying since we're Mets fans and the Yankees just get Stanton for nothing.
Right, they just manage to help they manage to help everybody else
But the Mets.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we can get off that topic. One of the other things this season has been Mickey Callaway and what the future of Mickey Callaway is. So what do you think the Mets should do about that?
Mickey Callaway should have been fired weeks ago. He's really does not know how to handle the pitching staff, which is shocking since he's the genius pitching coach of the Cleveland Indians powerhouse from 2016 and on. And
2016 prior to 2016 too.
Yeah, but around that time. But I'm all I can say is that I don't watch the entire game very often, and it's probably better that I don't watch full Mets games because every time
he doesn't stop complaining about the Mets.
I don't know what's going on. All right, it seems like with the exception of the very rare Syndergaard complete game that I've seen now him do twice in the last 2 seasons. Maybe it's more, but it seems like only twice. Unless the guy's going to pitch a complete game, Callaway will mismanage it. It started out in April where he was trying to see which pitchers could pitch more than an inning in relief, and the answer is none of them. Okay, none of them are capable of doing that. I mean, to take a guy like what's the guy he's on the name starts with an A, the left-handed reliever.
Starts with an A.
I think his last name starts with an A.
His last name starts with an A.
Avalon.
Yeah.
Right, so Avalon, who is supposed to be a left-handed specialist. That is his role on the team. You bring him in to get out left-handed hitters. He tried to pitch him for multiple innings. Now, I'm pretty sure that the team he was pitching against did not have 6 left-handed hitters in a row, or if even 5 out of 6 left-handers. He was just trying to stretch him out, which was not his role on the team. That is not what he is meant to do, and it seemed like. And another thing with bullpen is these guys have to have confidence, and even when guys are pitching well, they pitch well the first inning. You bring them out for the second inning, they get shelled, and then you didn't know what was in their heads.
Yeah.
And it just goes on and on. And then don't even start me on Wilmer Font.
Let's start you on Wilmer Font.
All right, so Wilmer Font, who is supposed to, I guess his role is to eat up innings and try and get some quality starts out of him. Every time he pitches, no matter what the situation is, he's gone after 4.
Yeah.
Now, I understand he's coming from the Rays, where they have a very unorthodox way of using their bullpen, including just, pitching entire games where it's just the bullpen from the first inning on. Stretch the guy out a little. He's not a fragile piece of crystal. He's a major league ball player who's been around long enough that, he should be able to be a little bit flexible. I mean, if the whole problem is their bullpen is overtaxed, how does it help if he can only pitch 4 innings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't understand it at all. I think that the only reason Mickey Callaway is still the manager of the Mets is that the Mets are too cheap to fire him, have to pay the rest of his salary, and pay someone else more money to manage. They do not want to. They refuse to pay 2 people to manage the Mets at the same time.
And also the thing with Mickey Callaway, which I put in my latest article on TheSportUniverse.com, is that the whole thing was, or at least I thought the whole thing was, he didn't have much of a talented roster last year to prove himself, which is what they were saying, even though I thought it was pretty talented last year. So they wanted to give him another season with a talented roster, which they have now, or should have. But he hasn't proven anything based off this year. And I think he's proven more that he mismanages many situations that the team's put in. Okay, Okay, sorry we had to stop. My dad got really mad about the Mets. So he told me to cut it, and I cut it. So now we're back. Still driving, so you're still going to hear the same audio. We were just talking about Mickey Callaway. Do you want to go off of that topic and go on to a different one? Okay. I'm going to save the question I was just thinking of for the last question, because I think it's the best question I have. Let's see. I want to think of a better question that makes us more happy than mad. So maybe, as a Mets fan, what has been your favorite memory? Wait, hold on. Also, wait, never mind. Just go.
Well, I want you to guess what my favorite Mets memory is. You think?
Obviously, it's going to be winning the World Series.
It's not winning the World Series, but it will always be Game 6 of the 1986 World Series, which is,
ball got by Buckner. That's
that moment. That moment. My brother. So I was in high school. My brother would have been in middle school, I think. Well, he might have been in high school too. But I don't remember too much of that game until the end anymore. But famously, the Mets in extra innings were losing, and it had 2 outs in the bottom of the inning, and everything was it. It was just everything seemed lost, and there was no way they could ever recover and win the game. And I remember, I certainly we had a TV in the living room. We didn't have TVs in our rooms back then, so we had both. I went back up to my room to get ready for bed, and I'm pretty sure my brother did. And then I don't know how many batters we missed. I want to say maybe just one, maybe 2. But my dad called us back down to watch, and it was just a miracle. You don't expect, all the odds were completely against the Mets to have any chance there. But Gary Carter got a hit. Kevin Mitchell got a hit. Ray Knight got a hit, scoring 1 run. No, wait, so Gary Carter already scored. That scored the second run, and it was tied. And then Mookie Wilson comes up,
and then
it wasn't tied. Wait a minute. Mookie Wilson came up. No, I guess it wasn't tied yet. Oh, now I'm not remembering. This is bad. Okay, well, I don't certainly know that, of course, Mookie Wilson, there was a wild pitch, and that miraculously Mookie Wilson dodged that ball like no one else could to avoid getting hit by the pitch. And then he hit that ground ball that only could have been botched by a player like Bill Buckner, who was on 2 bad knees, couldn't really bend down all the way to get a ball rolling towards first base, and he was only out there because McNamara, the Red Sox manager, wanted the starting players on the field when the Boston Red Sox finally won a World Series after 70 years or whatever it was at that point. And if McNamara had made the smart baseball decision instead of the emotional decision, that play wouldn't have happened the way it did. And the rest is history. That was just an amazing game. But a lot of people forget the Mets were losing in Game 7 too, and they had to come back in that game, and then scored a bunch of runs to take the lead for good. But none of that would have happened if it wasn't for the confluence of crazy things that happened in that one at bat by Mookie Wilson, which the fact that I was able to, I don't know which batters I missed. I certainly missed the Gary Carter hit, and I probably missed the Kevin Mitchell hit. But I know I was watching for Ray Knight and Mookie Wilson, and to be able to say that I was there watching that, even though I was only watching on the TV in my living room in my parents' house, it's not like I was at the stadium, that nothing will ever match that in terms of baseball or any sports experience. It was just amazing.
Yeah. I think I've only heard that story like 1 or 2 times. But I guess I remember it. But that reminded me of when the Mets were in the World Series in 2015. Obviously, they didn't win, and there was no moment like that. But I remember
the Royals had a lot of those moments.
Okay, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so, like Game 7, once the Royals came back and everything, I was still watching till the end, and my dad had left the room because, once again, he was upset about the Mets, and obviously nothing good came out of it, but one of the things that I was thinking about was that the Mets might not be in that situation in the World Series again, and I didn't really want to miss it, even if it was a bad ending. And
well, you're a good fan, Brian.
Yeah, that's what we always say, that I'm more of the optimistic fan, like I said earlier, and my dad has been through a lot in the sports world that he's become, Jaded, yeah. Jaded towards all his teams. But yeah, so I think I have 2 favorite memories of the Mets. I haven't been around long enough, like I said, to see anything really great come from the Mets. I'd say my first favorite memory is Johan Santana's no-hitter. What can I say? That was just one of the craziest... How do I want to word this? I mean, prior to that, there was really nothing with the Mets that had made me really feel like a Mets fan, because there's nothing really good going on. And during that whole game, I remember each inning kept on going by, and I had the wherewithal to know that he hadn't given up any hits yet. And I don't remember, did we discuss that he hadn't given up any hits, or were we trying to not say anything?
I don't think we were trying to say anything.
Okay, so, but I feel, did we just all know?
I think so.
Was Scott home? Oh.
Yeah, of course.
Scott's my brother. So we were watching, and I remember we had a medicine ball that I was sitting on, and I guess you'd call me, superstitious about sports, even though I'm trying to get out of that because it's very annoying to be superstitious. But I try to always have some body part on the medicine ball during the whole game because he hadn't given up a hit yet, and every inning just kept on going by, and I was like, he hasn't given up a hit yet. But then his pitch count started to get really high, and by the end of the game, it's 130 something, I think. And when he finally threw the no-hitter, obviously the Mets had never had a no-hitter before that, so it was a big historic moment for the Mets. And I'd say it's one of my favorite memories because it's one of the only historic things that I've seen the Mets actually accomplish. And just all the emotion of it, you heard, I still don't know who the scream came from at the end of the game, but there was a scream after he threw his last pitch. It was either from Gary Cohen or whoever, Ron Darling or Keith Hernandez, or it was from Johan Santana, which I think it was. Just all the emotion of everyone knowing what had just happened and everything like that, that was one of my favorite memories. And I'd say, even though it ruined Santana's career, to me it was kind of worth it, because I'm sure Santana's career with the Mets wouldn't have led to any other historic moment for the Mets to have accomplished. Probably true. Yeah.
It's hard to say. Was it worth it? We don't know if that actually ruined his career. It didn't help that he pitched. I think it was 137 pitches. And of course, he only pitched a couple more games after that, maybe one or two, before he went on the disabled list and never came back. But certainly seems to be that's true. But that was definitely a great moment. I would also say that, you know, if I'm going to finish this up by mentioning one other great moment. Was the Grand Slam single in the 1999. Bye.
Wait. Okay, we're not done. I don't know why I said bye. Okay, so my dad's not going to be talking right now because he has to pay attention to directions. I'd say this isn't going to be a specific moment, but just the whole ride of 2015 at the end of the season. Once again, I hadn't witnessed anything by the Mets of doing anything like that. But the whole 2015 playoffs was still is kind of a blur to me. I remember when it started, I had this big math test that day, and I couldn't really focus on my math test because I knew the Mets were about to play in a actual playoff game, which I had never seen and I was just really excited for. And luckily, my mom took me out of school early because I had told her that I can't focus on this math test or studying for it because of the Mets. And she took me out of school. I think also I wasn't feeling well, but that probably was, I don't know. And so they played, that was against the Dodgers. And then there's only 3 key moments of the playoffs that I actually remember. And just that I could think back to. Obviously, the Daniel Murphy when he stole third, which my dad says is what made the Mets have an actual anything that playoffs. Because if he hadn't stolen third when there was no one covering third against the Dodgers, they wouldn't. It was a sacrifice fly after that, I think, right?
I think so. Yeah.
They wouldn't have got the sacrifice fly that would have scored Daniel Murphy and tied the game. Then obviously Daniel Murphy having 8 straight games of 8 home runs in each game, which was just crazy and made Daniel Murphy what he was into. But I'm not going to get into that because that's just annoying. And that just the whole 2015, obviously it ended in a bad way. But I also remember from that the interview at the end of the Cubs series with David Wright and him finally getting back to the World Series, that they thought after 2006 was going to be the Mets for the rest of his career, getting back to the playoffs, getting back to the World Series, but he never actually got there except for 2015, and it just kind of seemed why can't I think of words? It seemed I don't know, I can't think of the word. It seemed like it should happen, and that was the last big thing David Wright did with the Mets, which is sad, but yeah. I wanted to get into one more question, but I don't know if we have time to do that. Okay, I guess we don't have time since we're getting to one of our destinations on our trip. Thanks for listening. Thanks to my dad for being on one of my podcasts.
My pleasure, Brian.
Oh, God. I don't know why he said it like that. So just some logistical things. We're doing this podcast. It should be up later tonight. I'm going to do another podcast with Nick and a new member of the TheSportUniverse crew this weekend. That should be up. I have a new posting schedule that I'm sticking to for YouTube, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. There's going to be highlight videos like I've been doing, and then the weekend we're going to have a podcast. But that's it for this Mets podcast. This isn't going to be a series or anything unless my dad wants to. This is just trying to get rid of 40 minutes of our car ride. And so that's it. Check out our latest YouTube video that's going to be up later tonight of Zion Williamson. Go to our website, that's 4 W's, 3 W's.thesportuniverse.com. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Meet the Mets, step Ride up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball.